The Bible versus science. It's been called the biggest faith killer of our time. We're told you have to choose a side. But what if that's a false choice? What if the whole conflict is based on a huge misunderstanding of what the book of Genesis is actually saying? What if the Bible isn't at war with science, but is asking a completely different set of questions? For a lot of us, the whole debate feels like a winner-take-all match. In one corner, you have the book of Genesis with its story of a 6-day creation, and in the other, the book of science with its chapters on the Big Bang, a 13.8 billion-year-old universe, and a 4.5 billion-year-old Earth where life evolved over eons. This isn't just some stuffy academic debate. It gets personal. It can force a choice between faith and reason, between the sacred stories we grew up with and the evidence from our telescopes and microscopes. It's a tension that has led many to walk away from faith, convinced that intellectual honesty means dismissing the Bible as a book of outdated myths. The argument seems pretty simple. If science has shown the Earth is billions of years old and the Bible says it was made in 6 days, then the Bible must be wrong. And if Genesis is wrong on page 1, how can you trust the rest of it? This apparent contradiction is the problem we've been told to solve. But this entire war is built on one massive assumption, that we're reading both books correctly. Specifically, that we're reading Genesis the way its author and original audience would have. What if we've been asking the wrong questions all along? To find an answer, we can't start in a modern lab. We have to go back in time, not just to the beginning of the world, but to the beginning of the text. Before we decide if Genesis contradicts science, we have to ask a more basic question. What is Genesis? This is a question of genre. We get this intuitively in our daily lives. You don't read a poem the same way you read a legal contract. You don't analyze a love letter with the same tools you use for a cookbook. They each have their own purpose and their own rules. Reading one like it's the other is a recipe for misunderstanding. So what genre is Genesis 1? A divine lab report? Or something else entirely? Well, historians and biblical scholars point out that Genesis wasn't written in a vacuum. It was composed in the ancient Near East, thousands of years before the scientific method existed. It was a world swimming in mythology, where surrounding cultures, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, had their own dramatic, often violent creation stories. For example, in the Babylonian epic Enuma Elish, the world is created from the carved-up body of a defeated goddess, Tiamat, in a chaotic cosmic war. The sun, moon, and stars aren't just objects, they're powerful gods to be feared. And humans? They're an afterthought, created from the blood of a rebellious god, Kingu, designed to be slaves for the divine pantheon. Now read Genesis 1 against that backdrop. It's not just a different story, it's a radical, subversive statement. Many scholars see it as a powerful theological argument. Where pagan myths saw many gods fighting, Genesis declares there is one God who speaks creation into existence with order and purpose. Where pagans saw the sun, moon, and stars as powerful deities, Genesis demotes them. It just calls them lights, created things, set in the sky to mark time, functionaries, not gods. And where the Enuma Elish sees humanity as divine slaves, Genesis declares that humans are the pinnacle of creation, made in the very image of God, given purpose and authority. Seen in its historical context, Genesis 1 wasn't written to answer 21st century questions about astrophysics. It was written to answer ancient questions about God and our place in the world. Who is God? What is this world all about? It's a theological manifesto designed to tell its first readers, the ancient Israelites, that their God is the one true creator, and that the universe is not a chaotic battlefield, but an ordered, good, and purposeful creation. The plot thickens when we look at the original language. The first book of the Bible was written in Hebrew, and some of the key words in this debate are often misunderstood in translation. Let's start with the word for create, bara. In the entire Hebrew Bible, this powerful verb is used only with God as its subject. Humans can asa, make or do, but only God can bara. This special word pops up at three key moments in Genesis 1. The creation of the cosmos in verse 1, of conscious animal life in verse 21, and of humanity in God's image in verse 27. Bara signals a moment of divine creative power. But here's the thing. It tells us who did it, not how he did it. The word itself doesn't require an instantaneous out-of-nothing event every time. Reading that into the text is an interpretation, not a linguistic requirement. Now for the most debated word of all. Yom, the Hebrew word for day. Many people assume Yom can only mean a 24-hour solar day, and it certainly can, but that's not its only meaning. Just like in English, Yom can refer to the daylight hours, a 24-hour period, or a general undefined period of time, like in my grandfather's day or the day of the Lord. The Bible itself uses Yom in all these ways. So while a 24-hour view is possible, it's not the only reading the language allows. Opponents of this idea often point to the phrase, "there was evening and there was morning" at the end of each day. Surely, they argue, that clinches it for a 24-hour cycle. Yet there's an interpretive puzzle right in the text. The sun, moon, and stars, the very things that govern our 24-hour days, aren't mentioned until day 4. This has been a sticking point for interpreters for centuries. How could there be a solar evening and morning for the first 3 days if the sun wasn't even described yet? This has led many readers, both ancient and modern, to suggest that the evening and morning structure is a literary device, framing a beginning and a completion of a creative era, not just the ticking of a clock. You might be thinking this is all just a modern rescue mission, a desperate attempt to make the Bible fit with Darwin and Hubble. But this debate is ancient. Long before modern science, some of the most influential thinkers in church history wrestled with these same questions. Meet Augustine of Hippo, a brilliant theologian from the 4th and 5th centuries. In his work, The Literal Meaning of Genesis, he dedicated immense brainpower to this very topic. He was 1,500 years removed from our scientific debates, yet he seriously questioned whether the days of Genesis were ordinary 24-hour solar days. He noted the puzzle of the sun not appearing until day 4 and explored the idea that creation might have happened in a single instant, with the 6 days being a logical framework to help us understand God's work, not a literal timeline. And he wasn't alone. Earlier thinkers like Origen of Alexandria in the 3rd century and the Jewish philosopher Philo in the 1st century also read Genesis with a focus on its allegorical and theological meanings. The point is, the idea that Genesis 1 might be more than a scientific play-by-play isn't some new invention. It's a historically grounded perspective within mainstream Christian thought, held by some of its greatest minds, long before the Big Bang was even a glimmer of an idea. So, if Genesis 1 isn't a science textbook, what is it? When we set aside our modern questions for a moment and listen to the text on its own terms, a series of profound theological claims emerge. First, the universe had a beginning. It isn't eternal. God came before it. Second, God is the one and only creator, separate from his creation. Third, creation is good, orderly, and has a purpose. It's not the result of random chance or divine brawling. And fourth, human beings are made in the image of God, which gives them a unique dignity and role. These aren't scientific claims, they're theological and metaphysical ones. They answer the who and why of creation, not the how and when. This is often summed up in the two books concept, an idea championed by thinkers like Augustine and Francis Bacon. It suggests God has revealed himself through two books, Scripture and nature. They aren't in conflict because they have different jobs. As the thinking goes, science helps us understand how the heavens go, while the Bible helps us understand how to go to heaven. Science gives us the mechanism, Genesis gives us the meaning. For a long time in modern science, particularly in the early 20th century, the dominant cosmological model was that the universe was static and eternal. The idea of an absolute beginning was often seen as a religious concept, not a scientific one. In that view, Genesis stood apart with its bold claim, "In the beginning." Then, in the 20th century, something remarkable happened. Through the discoveries of astronomers like Edwin Hubble, we learned the universe is expanding. If you rewind that expansion, it leads back to an incredibly hot, dense state. This became known as the Big Bang theory, and it indicated that our universe had a starting point roughly 13.8 billion years ago. This didn't prove Genesis, but for the first time, the scientific consensus developed a remarkable resonance with the Bible's most fundamental claim: the universe is not eternal, it had a beginning. In a fascinating turn, the scientific story suddenly had a first chapter, and it echoed an idea the Bible had been talking about for millennia. So, does science actually contradict the Bible? The conflict, it turns out, is largely an illusion born from a category error. It's what happens when we force an ancient theological text to answer modern scientific questions it was never asking. When we read Genesis 1 as a scientific treatise on how the universe was made, we create a war we don't need to fight. But when we read it for its intended purpose, as a theological proclamation of who made the universe and why, the supposed conflict just melts away. Science can tell us about the Big Bang, but its methods aren't designed to tell us why there was a Big Bang. It can describe the processes of evolution, but it can't tell us the purpose of life. Genesis gives us a framework of meaning. It tells us the universe was created with purpose by a good God, that it's not a cosmic accident, and you, made in His image, have profound value. Science and faith aren't enemies in a cage match. They are, at their best, two different windows looking out at the same magnificent reality. They ask different questions and give different but complementary kinds of answers. So maybe the question isn't whether science contradicts the Bible. Maybe the better question is, have we been reading both correctly? If this idea of rediscovering ancient texts is interesting to you, make sure to subscribe for more. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What's the biggest question this topic raises for you? Thanks for watching.